Hi, I'm Melanie, and you're watching Yarn Journeys. Today's episode is all about my recent trip up to New York for Vogue Knitting Live. If you're not familiar with Vogue Knitting Live, it is a multi-day conference in New York, in Manhattan's Times Square at the Marriott Marquis, and I am so lucky to have been able to go up and participate, and I look forward to sharing my experiences with you all. Also, after we do that, I'll be sure to update you on my finished objects, current projects, and things I'm planning to work on. So, Vogue Knitting Live. It was truly fabulous. I am so glad I went. It was fairly easy for me to hop on the train at Union Station, and Amtrak whisked me right up to Manhattan. There is so much to do and see at Vogue Knitting Live. I mean, there's classes and the marketplace and just all the other knitters, the fashion shows. I really enjoyed every bit of it. But I also really enjoyed being back up in Manhattan. I used to travel there frequently for work, at least once a month. And I really missed that excitement and hustle and bustle and the feeling on the streets and looking up at the tall buildings. And it was really nice to get my Manhattan fix. So here is some footage I took while I was at Vogue Knitting Live in New York. The night I arrived, the Empire State Building was done up in the colors of the Ukrainian flag. In the morning, I took a little walk around Midtown to check out the buildings in the beautiful morning sun, and I always enjoy seeing the lions of the New York Public Library. And then I headed over to Times Square to the Marriott Marquis, where Vogue Knitting Live was being held. I snuck in. See what people are putting up. The center of action is the marketplace with all the booths and the fashion show. So I did take a few classes and they were super helpful. The first classes I took were with Shirley Payton. She is a longtime knitwear designer and pattern designer who has dedicated a substantial part of her time these days to mentoring new knitwear designers and new pattern makers. And in fact, she was featured in the fall issue of Vogue magazine, and I can show you a couple of her patterns. So hope this isn't too glary in the light. This is actually a pattern from the early 2000s, and I think it holds up rather well. I would be super psyched to knit that. And this is one of her more recent patterns that she did specifically for this issue. Anywho, I took her class on cables and twists, and we did a lot of swatches of different types of cables and different types of techniques so that we could get super comfortable with reading cables charts and thinking strategically about how to approach those cables. It was super helpful. But along the way, she also imparted a couple of tips which I will share with you. I don't think I am violating any intellectual property here. I just thought these were things that made me go, and they make a lot of sense. Rather than try and estimate the length of yarn, rather than try to estimate the length of yarn you need for a very long tail cast on. I mean, let's say you have to cast on 180 stitches and you're trying to estimate how long the tail should be. Why not cast on with 2 balls of yarn, with one ball being the tail and one ball being the working yarn you intend to continue knitting with? And that way you don't have to play yarn chicken with your cast on tail. It's like genius, and that makes total sense. The thing that I thought was super helpful and is how to measure gauge across cabled fabrics. Because cables, of course, change very much how a stockinette gauge works. I mean, the more things are cabled, the more your gauge narrows. And particularly if you have different cables in a row next to each other, that can really change your gauge over a large swath of fabric. And so she explained that to measure gauge across a number of cables, it's best to make a very big swatch and not just 10 centimeters, but more like 8, 10 inches, or however many inches you need to fit all your cables in, and then take a full gauge across that. And that will better help you estimate how your gauge is going to end up being in your knitted garment, which again makes total sense. Now, maybe you already knew all these things, but I hadn't. I mean, they make intuitive sense, but I hadn't really come across someone making these explicit recommendations. So I really enjoyed my time with Shirley, and she was just so nice, so gracious. I mean, granted, she is old school, but she is not outdated, not in the least. On Saturday, I took a course with Kate Atherley, who is really well known for being a master of all things technical with knitting. She's written books on how to write patterns. She's a very well sought after tech editor, and I actually have one of her books, which is Custom Socks, Knit to Fit Your Feet. So she really is an expert on all things fit with garments, and socks and hats and whatever you need to make sure it fits your body. The course I took with Kate was all about how to set yourself up for success when knitting sweaters. And this is all about one of the goals I had set for myself this year, which is to really understand how sweater design and fit really works so that when I have a finished garment, I really want to wear it and I really want to love it. And that's what Kate is all about too. So first of all, she is hilarious. I mean, so funny, so engaging. The class went by so quickly. I really, really got a lot out of it. And I want to share a few things because I'm not going to give away, again, all of Kate's tips and tricks. I want to just share with you some of the smart things she said that really stuck with me. So I'm looking at my notes here. Thing one, sweater fit is all about how a design fits your shoulder girdle and your upper chest. So that really is, the construction of the upper chest of your garment and the shoulders and everything is going to determine pretty much how the rest of it goes. She also explained that a lot of neckline problems are actually really more about shoulder construction. So that was food for thought for me right there. Thing number two made me realize that sometimes I am picking the wrong size for my garments. And she pointed out that there's not a whole lot of clarity and specific guidance about what it means to choose a sweater by your bust circumference. And really, the thing that matters is not really like your full bust circumference, like the furthest part out that your body comes away from, your chest. I'm, delicately trying to describe like boobs. It's really more about the upper chest measurement, and that a lot of times I've been picking sizes that are actually too big, and as a result the shoulders are too big, which is making the neckline stretch too much. So she recommends thinking about the garment by taking your upper chest measurement, adding the ease, and then seeing how much clearance that gives you over your full bust measurement. The way that she explained this really made me think about how I might have been choosing my sweater sizes all along, because I was way more focused on my full bust circumference as opposed to my upper bust circumference. So, curious if you've heard about this before and how you manage it. Or is this really only news to me? It might be. What else? Of course, right now, oversized sweaters are extremely popular. And I mean, if you look at all the petite knits sweaters, or my favorite thing sweaters, or just a lot of sweaters are, big drop shoulder. There's a lot of ease. And that can be really unflattering for many people. Here's what she explained is that oversized sweaters can work really well so long as they give a hint to the body that's underneath. So for example, if you have a big oversized sweater that's drop shoulder, it may work better as a V-neck because you'll see the collarbones, and that will give you a sense more of the body that's underneath the sweater. She also explained that drapey light fabrics, even in oversized, they drape down from the body so that you can see where the outlines are. And that was really interesting because I'd kind of come to a place where, like, yeah, that oversized sweater trend, I hope it passes by soon. But she really explained how one can make it flattering for oneself if you didn't think you could wear an oversized sweater. All right, thing number 4. And this is something I had heard before, but had kind of decided I didn't really want to pay attention. And this is that sweaters that are knitted flat and seamed have a lot more structure and can be better fitting than sweaters that are knit top down and in the round. So everybody is knitting sweaters top down and in the round these days, particularly because it's a lot easier. You know, it seems to go faster. And I get it. I mean, top down and in the round is easier. It is faster. But sometimes, though, that shoulder construction, if the increases or the decreases across the raglan or doesn't work, you can really end up with some horror stories around the shoulders. It made me want to think about knitting flat and seaming. You know, I can be a big girl. I can seam sweaters. I've done it before. So, in fact, I've got one in mind, which I'll talk to you about in a moment. Overall, I really felt like by taking these classes, I progressed towards one of my goals of really educating myself about knitwear design and sweater success. So we'll see how well I am able to put those lessons into effect. Of course, one of the most awesome things about attending a conference where there are hundreds and hundreds of knitters is that you get to see some of those sweaters that you've been checking out on Ravelry's Hot Right Now, walking around in real life. So, you know, I saw lots of ranunculuses parade by and a lot of love notes. But there were some newer ones walking around that I was super excited to see. So one of my fellow students in Shirley Payton's class was knitting, actually she was finishing the Fearless sweater, which recently came out in Radam magazine, which is a Scandinavian knitting magazine. And the designer is Paul Haesemeyer. I hope I said that right. Anyway, I have really been checking out this design. And it's got these beautiful cables and this sort of A-line wide ribbing at the bottom. And I just looked at the sweater and think, that is gorgeous. And I really think it will look beautiful on me. And I started checking out the pattern more closely. And of course, it is knit flat and seamed. And I thought to myself, knit flat and seamed, forget about it. But then one of my fellow students was actually seaming it during the breaks of class. And it really, really was gorgeous. So, and I started to think, I want to knit that and I want to wear that. And of course, after hearing Kate say, you know, if you want better success with sweaters, knit flat and seam, they tend to be more successful. So I bought the pattern over the weekend. Of course, it helped that they were having a Valentine's Day sale, so the sweater pattern was half price. But I feel fairly confident that this one's going to get on my needles this year. The other sweater pattern that I was super psyched to see was Catherine Clark's Good Day Sunshine, which just came out. Catherine Clark is the owner of Brooklyn General, and she's also the designer of such gorgeous sweaters as, I think it's called Ixchel, which is about the moon phases. Good Day Sunshine is an all over color work, stranded color work sweater that I think looks really cool. And what was fabulous was that I got to talk to Catherine about it while I was at Vogue Knitting live. I don't actually love her color choices on this. I actually have something in mind a little different, but I got to talk to her about it. She showed me examples of how other people had knit it with different colors and what to watch out for, and also about bases, because I think this would look just lovely in Magpie Fibers Swanky Sock. And I know she's very familiar with that yarn. So it was just so much fun to have like a conversation with the designer about yarn and colors. And it was, I'm at a loss for words. It was such a fun time. And while I was there, there were other YouTubers out and about, and it was fun to say hi. I got to meet the lovely ladies of the Knitting Posse, which if you don't know about, you absolutely should. They are so much fun to sit and knit with. They are three friends that podcast together. I think they about once every couple of weeks, if they can. And it's just like sitting and knitting with friends. They talk about what they're doing and what they're making, and I really like them. And I also got to meet rising star Tajiana of Stitches and Starlight. You probably are already watching Stitches and Starlight because Taji is so entertaining. She knits, she spins, she's making her own bats, she washes fleece. In fact, she is so inspiring that other YouTubers are taking up spinning just because they're watching Taji. So it was really fun to meet someone I find so inspiring in person. If you are enjoying this video, please do hit that like button and do subscribe. It really does help people like yourself find this channel, and that way they can enjoy it too. All right, now it's time for some show and tell. So first up, some acquisitions. The marketplace at Vogue Knitting Live is stupendous. So much beautiful yarn and notions and stuff. But I did a very good job in not buying too much because I had said to myself that I had to organize my stash and really do a proper going through before I really allowed myself to buy stuff at the marketplace. And well, I didn't really get around to doing that before I left for Vogue Knitting Live. However, I did promise my husband that I was going to make him a sweater. And I've decided on a pattern, which is Andrea Mowry's Gib. This came out last year. Let me move it closer. This is the men's version of the sweater. It was originally designed for Brooklyn Tweed's Imbue, but I really didn't have the kind of worsted that the pattern calls for in my stash, and also my husband really wanted a softer yarn for his sweater. So I came home with a sweater's quantity of Hudson and West Forge. This is 70% merino, 30% Corriedale. It is delightfully squishy and soft. And I really love this color. I'm gonna bring it up close. It is, I think, like a nice steel gray blue on top of a grayish merino base. And I just kind of love the pewtery effect there. And I think it is going to look really nice in this pattern. You know, I'm an Andrea fangirl, like so many others of you, I hope. Well, you know, I am wearing my night shift shawl today. So that was my one acquisition, and I am very glad that I was able to keep to just the one. You know, every once in a while, one has to exhibit some self-control. I have a finished object to show you. These are my Curio socks. Another Andrea Mowry pattern, her Curio ones, which came out in 2021. It's my second go at this pattern, and I think this yarn is so beautiful. It's high twist blue faced Leicester with nylon that I'd also used to make my bear paw socks, also from Andrea Mowry. And I love these socks so much that I figured, why not use the rest of that yarn for another pair? So, and I felt really good about using up my stash. And not having half skeins of sock yarn, you know, just hanging out there. I am in the home stretch of my Plus shawl by Olgajazzy. The yarn is Yarn Heroes Merge Sport, and the colors are Railway for the accent color and Horny Toad for the background color. I really love knitting this shawl. It is taking me some time, however, but I'm in the home stretch now. I've now gotten to the other wing, but it is just knitting up so beautifully, and I'm just really pleased with how this is turning out. So I am hopeful that it is going to be done in about a week or two. But it's been more knitting than I expected, but I really am enjoying the knit. So on the home stretch, I just now am hoping that I don't end up playing yarn chicken, because this is all I have left of the Railway, and I checked on Yarn Heroes webpage this morning, and they do not have any more of this left. So keep your fingers crossed for me, please. So that brings me to the next thing that is going to go on my needles. And that is a pair of mittens I am going to make for the Woolly Thistles Colorwork Knit Along. I love the Woolly Thistles shopcast. It's one of my favorite things to watch after it comes out on, I think, every other Sunday. And Friday is the start of their knit along. The only rule is that you have to make it 80% with yarns that you've bought with the Woolly Thistle, which totally makes sense because they are a yarn shop. I have chosen for my pattern a pair of mittens that comes from this vintage pattern book. This is Scandinavian Snow Sets by Kajsa Lindquist. And this was printed in 1948. Somehow in the late 80s, my sister got a copy of this, and in the mid 90s, I was living with my parents after college for a couple years and was really knitting up a storm, and she wasn't there. So I took it out of her bookcase and started knitting with it. In fact, hang on a sec. I have my very first color work knit. These mittens, these snowflake mittens, are from that pattern book, and I have kept them. They have since been munched on a little bit by moths, sadly, but I was able to wash them, and I darned them. And this is why I always hang on to scraps, because you never know when you're going to need to do a little fixing. So anyway, this is knit. These are knit with some yarn I got in a yarn shop in the mid 90s. But I think they're really pretty. But I kept the pamphlet, and now, I mean, this is from 1948, which is so cool. And I'm gonna be very careful with this. I'm gonna make sure that I scan the pattern, because I don't want to further break apart the book. It's in pretty good shape, but it is delicate. So I am going to make the Rococo mittens. Of course, the yarn that they recommend is, they just say 3-ply fingering yarn, 1 ounce blue green, and a small ball of rose. So, in any case, just needed to get you some hands on fingering yarn. This was written in the 1948. There is a chart. I will need to wear my glasses for that. And I mean, the instructions are all written out in paragraph form. So, which is kind of fun. I mean, it's a little bit different. And in the mid 90s, when I made these mittens, I didn't know any better, and I guess I figured it out just fine. So the fact that the pattern is written a little differently, if I could handle it then, I can handle it now. Anywho, I will be knitting this up in Jameson and Smith 2-ply jumper weight, that classic color work yarn from the Shetland Islands, made with Shetland wool. So this gray brown is going to be, let's see, there we go, is going to be the background. I think it's like a nice kind of oatmeal color. This is going to be the accent color for the leaves and sort of vegetation-like pattern. This is called Mix. It's number 29. Anyway, I love the way that there's yellow and green and a little blue in there. And then, of course, this lovely red for the rosebuds. So I'll be casting those on very soon, because tomorrow is the first day of the knit along. So that's what I've been getting up to and working on. I hope you enjoyed spending time with me and taking a visit to New York and Vogue Knitting Live. I really had a great time and hope to go back next year. Maybe I'll see you there. I highly recommend going if you have the opportunity and can get to New York. So please don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. I would be so deeply appreciative. That's it for today. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye-bye.